Good morning, afternoon, or evening, fellow yogis. Not sure when you're listening to this, but it is beautiful Saturday morning, 11:30 here. And wherever you are, and whatever you are, whenever you're listening to this, to congratulate you. I won't say thank you, to congratulate you for making the time for this. Because I've said it before, there's a million things you could be doing. I was just in the kitchen having breakfast with my wife, who was saying, oh, this is what we could be doing in the garden, and just looking at other little things that I could be cleaning up or reading or looking at. Just go on your browser, and you can see 1,000 things that you can click and watch. So to make time for this is a really good karma, they say. That I watched this movie this week called Project Hail Mary. Maybe you watched already. Hopefully you heard good things, because it is getting good reviews, and my son had told me to watch it at the theater. So we celebrated with my younger son after he finished his first set of exams. And yeah, I definitely recommend it. There's many good parts and points in it. And definitely one of the ones that was mentioned was, I won't tell you the whole story, but there's a part where they're asking, the main character to go up into space, to go far away, what he calls a suicide mission, just a one-way trip, not gonna come back. He's gonna die out in space when he heads out there. And the two other astronauts that were gonna go with him, they're really eager and excited to. They said, we're gonna die anyway, and by doing this, they're going to help save a lot of people. So obviously it kind of clicked in with what we're doing right now, learning more. As I told my tennis partner, when he's like, why the heck you waste so much time meditating, going on your retreats, when you could be playing tennis, I said, well, I know he's a really good money manager. He saves up a lot of his money. He's looking forward to saving money for his 2 kids. And I said, well, you're same way you're saving money for your future. I believe there's going to be a future life. So if I don't get enlightened in this lifetime, I'm saving up, building up karma for my next one. So I believe you're doing the same. So let's start with 3 prostrations, where we're thanking our teachers for passing on these teachings, offering body, speech, and mind. And the second one, I'm going to do a full prostration. I hope you can see. You kind of go body, speech, and mind. Then once you're on your knees, you slide onto your belly, and then onto your belly, and then you raise your arms and legs. So you can't see me, but you probably can hear my instruction. So connecting your body, speech, and mind. Come onto your knees, come onto your belly, and then just lift up your arms and legs, your arms in front of you. So that's a full prostration. And if you do, supposedly the Dalai Lama's exercise the same way yogis do sun salutations, that that his supposedly daily exercises do 108 of those. So the full prostration also is a way to, if you feel you have a lot of pride, to get rid of some of that pride. If you need, and you're learning, you're wanting to be kind to others. I'm just adjusting it. Okay, so last week I had shared about the lineage, and I forgot to show this. Maybe don't worry about reading the names. There's a ton of them. There's too many for me to read out. But just to see from the bottom right up to Jason Kappa, which is the famous teacher who wrote 10,000 pages of scripture I mentioned, whose the main disciple, Kedrup, he had two. Kedrup J was one of them, and give you the wrong. Yep, Kelsup J was the one who wrote one of the commentaries on what we're studying. Kind of like the first one was by Master Dignaga, then by Master Dharmakirti wrote the first commentary, and then Kedrup Kelsup J and Kedrup J were Jason Kappa's two main disciples. So anyway, on this one there is like about 20, this is the bottom, most recent lineage. There's about 21 teachers, and I was going, well, know that then kind of estimating there's probably about 40 in this lineage. And, you know, since Shakyamuni Buddha, 500 BC, that's 2,500 years. Knowing that, you know, in those earlier years, people, you know, didn't live till 80. It was definitely a shorter lifespan, so that's kind of why it may make sense to have 40 teachers. That's about average 60 years of the lineage. So that was something that Geshe Michael Roach had to memorize. So before we do a little review and into today's class, I thought I'd share one of the most important teachings, which if you are watching now, you probably have seen quite a few times, though they do say with this teaching, more is never bad, because our default is to not see this, even though this is the truth of how things exist. So here you see a pen, nice trusty one, and when you look at it, yeah, you see pen, but my dog, who is underneath the bed now, and babies probably don't see this as a pen. You know, when the puppy was small, we definitely didn't leave this around because you know, they would probably chew on it. You know, for our young boys, we definitely didn't leave this around because they might use this as a weapon on each other. Yeah? They say, you know, someone from an indigenous tribe that's still living out in the world where they're not connected may also not see this as a pen. So what is this proving? Proving that we place a label. Our mind supposedly, you know, sees this object, and same way how's Google, you could take a picture of any object with your camera and put it through Google Lens, and Google Lens will run through its whole database to tell you what it might be, what it might cost, you know. So this is what's happening at a super speed in our mind, that this is a pen. I'll show you something which I've shown you before that you may not recognize. Maybe you don't know what this is and your mind is trying to see what it is now. As you can't feel it, maybe you think it's soft, maybe it's something to eat. But I didn't bite it because it's actually quite hard. Something we'll use in a meditation at the end of class to discuss this emptiness a little bit more. But yes, according to Buddhism, our mind is projecting onto an object what it is. And for objects that we don't know, we won't be able to, it'll just be like click, 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 you know, we won't know. And so this is proving that, showing maybe, that everything we see, touch, smell, taste, even think about, isn't out there, but it's coming from our mind, which they say is in our heart. That's why we're connecting our body, speech, and mind. Right? So if it's a first time you heard this in a while, just kind of let that sit with you. But do think about something that you may dislike. You know, if you have anything that's you're not enjoying, that you've experienced. Maybe you have a pain in your body. I kind of pulled my leg. Maybe you had an experience with someone recently that you didn't like. I just got yelled at for buying pork belly, which was mostly fat. You know, supposedly we can say it's out there. It's my wife yelling at me, but supposedly, I mean, realistically, it's coming from something that I've done to someone else in the past. So let us continue with our opening prayers, where we are first just going to dedicate or actually call on our bodhicitta. Just think about how we're going to help all others. So we'll do it in Tibetan, all right? So you can see it there. Sashi Puki Jukshin Meitog Tram Vira Lingshi Yende Genpa Di Sangye Shindu Mite Uwargi Drokun Namdak Shingla Dupar Shok Idam Guru Ratnam Madalakam Niratayami. And then we'll go for refuge, or seeking protection. And we'll do that 3 times. So, oh shucks. Well, the first one is the same for the closing prayer, but here is refuge. Okay. Sangye Chudang Soki Choknam La Jangshu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Dakni Jinyin Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Panchir Sangye Drupar Shok Sangye Chudang Soki Choknam La Jangshu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Dakni Jinyin Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Panchir Sangye Drupar Shok Sangye Chudang Soki Choknam La Jangshu Pardu Dakni Gyapsu Chi Dakni Jinyin Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Panchir Sange Drupar Shok. Okay, so if you remember that this course is about the proof of past and future lives, what we are studying is logic. And that with logic, 99% of our perceptions are valid perceptions, things that we observe, called pramana. And unless we're intoxicated with alcohol, drugs, maybe we're intoxicated with a really strong emotion, jealousy, being really angry, or we can't see something really clearly. We think something dark is a raccoon when actually it's just a dog or a cat. 99% of our perceptions are true, right? So why do we need to study these valid perceptions? Well, the famous quote by Buddha is what we had shared last week. If I or someone like myself can judge a person, but no normal person should judge another, for he will fall. And it is to remind us not to judge others, because we actually don't know if they could be a holy being, a Buddha manifesting as, a coworker you don't really like, a boss who's giving you a hard time, a family or friend who, you're not completely enamored with something they said or didn't say. So, we're using Buddhist logic. Why is it important? Because there are many things that are not visible to us. This is like the questions in Buddhism. Is there really nirvana? Can you really become a Buddha? Can we as humans reach that same stage? Because if you cannot, by logic, deduction, and reasoning, believe that, then there really is no point in listening to this. You could be watching something a lot more fun, a lot funnier, a lot more interesting. Right? But that, if you do come to that conclusion, if you're there already, then there are steps that the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, did follow themselves, and that he has shared. The end of last course was the Lamb Rim, the steps to the path of enlightenment, that give us the simple steps that will lead us to where we don't suffer anymore. As blessed as we are, if you're listening to this, you're living a very blessed life. I'm sure there's suffering. And if you really are in a really good phase, to know that, with each day you're getting older, getting closer to death. And so that everything that you do, enjoy and love, working towards, working with, are not going to be with you. So this is where they, you may want to just go to the email I sent you, because there's that attachment there. You don't have to print it out, but maybe, as I'm talking through it, it helps you learn by looking, just to open up that PDF, because that's a chart that we're going to go over in today's class. And that on the left-hand side, there is, on the left-hand side of the table, it's called 3 levels of reality. 3 levels of reality. So the first one, they call Nyanggyur, is things which are obvious, you know, colors, shapes, objects of the senses. You know, an example is just a cup, a glass, right? Something that we see, kind of like our valid perception. The second level is Kokgyur. Kok means hidden. Kok means hidden. And so the classic example is emptiness, what we just spoke about. You know, that I say, you know, according to Buddhism, we are creating things from our mind, and this is something that we can't see how it's done. You know, other examples might be the sunlight. You don't really see sunlight, right? We feel it. You see the sun, but you don't see its rays, right? They say other examples is that you're dying, that every day you're getting closer to dying. So these perceptions, these hidden ones, are only ones that we can observe with deduction. That's what you see on that second column. You know, you can perceive Nyanggyur through our senses, but we require reasoning to see things which are hidden. You know, they say another example, if we use a glass again, that if suddenly you saw a glass, maybe on the table, a little kid is there, you turn around, walk out, and suddenly you hear the glass on the ground. You don't see it, but you hear it crash and break, the sound of glass. You can use your deduction to assume the glass got knocked over, and this is why, and it broke. Right? We're using our reasoning, not our direct senses, to see it. Right? You know, they say another example that everything we're around us is actually slowly falling apart. You know, wearing this shirt, but usually my pajamas or my shirts which are ripping, and I've seen it with time how you know, it used to be a brand new shirt, and then suddenly I pulled it one day, and then the whole, you know, the weakness in that part of the fabric rips, and then next time I take it off again, the hole gets bigger, and then another part. Yeah, it's starting to look like, you know, not something I wanted to wear before you, but it's nice and cool in the summer, so I'm keeping it. So yeah, things we use a reasoning to perceive. So the third one on that column is Shinto Kokhyur. So it's still hidden, but it's Shinto means deeply. So it's this Shinto Kokhyur is things which are very deeply hidden. And the classic example they said is the subtle workings of karma. Now, karma is also something we can't see, but they say it's more hidden because you know, one of the things that we don't know about karma is when something actually ripens. do something good, say example, you give money to somebody, um, well, according to laws of karma, you're going to get it back. But when do you? Because he said if there was no time lag, you get it back right away. You couldn't give away money. You give money, you get it right back in your pocket. But because there's a time lag, because karma grows, you will get it back later. Maybe in a year, maybe in another year, maybe in your next lifetime. So that is example of subtle workings of karma, and an example would be like in a car accident. Why did someone survive? If they all maybe wore seatbelts, or science seems to want to explain everything and say there's a cause for everything, but honestly, there's a lot of things that science can't explain. This is where, is it fair that two kids from the same parents, parented the same, turn out differently, have different lives, and career or money or relationship success or failure. Our first kid, we got in a lot of trouble with, got called in a lot to school, and I had to say it either was joked upon, or we kind of wondered, like, were we contributing to this? Like maybe we were too strict and was causing this, or not strict enough in some ways and causing this misbehavior. And then our second kid came around. We keep the same rules. He's never called in. We never called in. And then I guess the joke was, well, they're probably not doing such a bad job because our second kid isn't called in all the time. Accused of being a bully or whatever. So yeah, karma supposedly explains a lot of, my wife has this young boy who is like a theater, who loves the theater, musicals, and at grade 1 has memorized musicals and is singing on the top of his voice and dancing and just leading the whole class, and you just go, that is, for one, I believe he'll definitely do this and probably do really well, because he's already doing well. He's already directing and making his own little plays. But how did he get this talent? How did he, when all the other kids don't have it, well, karma will say that, Buddhists will say that he probably did in his past life, and that's why he's has the propensity and the ability to do what he does. So, these last two areas, Kokyu and Shinto Kokyu, the hidden and deeply hidden, are areas of trouble, they say, because not everyone uses their reasoning to see these things. And again, the goal of these classes, to study these, is so that we can use logic to, they'll say, prove that there isn't a God, that there isn't someone who's knows everything but is also all powerful. So they will say, I remember reading, in that book I showed you last week about Sapiens, that there's many scientists who are very logical and use that in their work, but never use that same skill to examine their own beliefs. That, a lot of people believe in God or gods without really examining that. Right? So another point that they wanted to share is that these three levels aren't kind of objective. They're really actually they depend on the subject. So here's a great example, for example, this color blue, which you might see on my shirt. It is a coquilleur for many of us, right? A nyanggyur, but maybe for a colorblind person, colorblind animal, it is a coquilleur. It is hidden, right? For someone with no ability, maybe think of an alien, cannot even pick up colors in our color scheme, how same way our eyes cannot see microwaves or certain wavelengths we cannot see. Maybe alien that cannot see our color wavelength. This is Shinto coquilleur when we tell them this is blue or yellow, right? So another example is what we just talked about, karma or emptiness. They are definitely hidden and deeply hidden for us humans, but for Buddha, it is nyanggyur. It is obvious. They see it. So that's what is the first column. Second column is the types of perception. Types of perception that are required for the different levels of reality. And so it makes sense. The first one, nyanggyur, is evident. The Tibetan word is gunsun sema. Gunsun sema. Remember, sema is perception. So it's these are things, this level of reality we perceive with our five senses. But also, they say, with the thoughts in our mind. So, they didn't really have an example for this one, but we had to also talk about the direct perception of emptiness, this 10 to 15 minute experience that leads us towards Buddhahood. That's kind of supposedly the big step that we must hope to reach, to head there. So we can explain it, that it is where we see how our mind creates our reality, how our mind creates this pen that we see, or even this person that we see in the mirror ourselves. But when you're actually experiencing it, this is a gunsum sema. This is something that you can actually perceive at the time when you have this perception. So the next one, I guess we had kind of discussed it already. It's that reasoning and deduction, kind of figuring it out that the glass broke because you had seen the glass, you walk out and you hear the glass. They're using our reasoning to perceive things which are hidden or deeply hidden. And so, the point Geshe Michael Roach is saying that the study of logic, pramana, is the same way, wine sommeliers, taste a lot of wine so they can improve that, their ability to pick up different tastes through their tongue or through their nose. By studying more logic, it will strengthen this part of our mind to reason. so we can understand things which are hidden or deeply hidden. And, you know, maybe when I talk about this last section, it might kind of go, ooh, just, you know, these are just definitions. But how it's really important for us is when we have problems with, let's say, with work or with family, with relationships, that if any of you have had any of those recently, this morning, you know, a lot of times it comes from, you know, not a very well developed reasoning deduction. You know, the example I just thought of was that, yeah, working at home on emails, I'm not in direct contact with the other manager, with my partner, and sometimes I hear about a mistake or I get a question. You know, the example I was thinking was just like a question that I answered on a previous email. I get it again. I kind of just like serious? Are they so lazy to not look up the email I had sent earlier or read that previous one and not know, or, you know, try to look in the manual that we had put this info in? I just, the default is just like lazy, you know, trying to have me do the work by answering it for them, you know, when sometimes I've often found out there's a reason they didn't do the extra work to check. You know, sometimes partner was in transit or in a place where they couldn't access their Google Drive. It has often been when, you know, the managers had some personal problem at home and were feeling stressed out, you know, with their own disagreements with their family and friends, and made it difficult to, you know, be clear-minded when they're actually doing their work. Yeah, I'm guessing you probably can think of some examples where you made some certain assumptions about somebody or what they did, and that if you know, withheld, you know, held back, you know, yelling back at them, and kind of found out what made them do what you disliked, maybe you get a reason that would make you feel compassionate and understand, and not have you feel like they did this personally or directed this at you. So yeah, reasoning is something that you know, it might sound understandable to you, but something that everyone has different varying degrees of ability with, and so we definitely want to improve that, right? The next part of what Geshe Michael Roach was just explaining, you know, what we're going to be moving into towards was in the reading. Maybe it wasn't even just in the reading, it was in the class. The first line of Master Dignaga's, oh, actually it's not Master Dignaga who wrote the first, but the first commentary by Master Dharmakirti's commentary on valid perception. And here's the quote: "I bow down to the person who has these 5 qualities of a Buddha: the protector, those gone to bliss; the teacher, those who wish to benefit sentient beings; and those who have turned into persons with valid perception. So a simple line, and maybe it's understandable to you, but probably there's parts of that sentence where you're like, may not make sense. Those who have turned into persons with valid perception, right? That actually is supposedly the Buddha, because he was someone who didn't have valid perception before, but when he was enlightened and became the Buddha, he was able to see everything, is no longer hidden or deeply hidden. So anyway, this is the opening line in his commentary, and I think Geshe Michael Roach says, just wanted to explain, in most of the commentaries, the author usually writes down an offering. And so I bow down to the person. This is the opening line of where he, Dharmakirti, is bowing down to Buddha for these 5 different qualities: turning into a person with valid perception, to be a protector of others, to have gone to the final state, the teacher, who he is, and of that desire to benefit all beings. So they said in every Buddhist book, what makes it a Buddhist book must have 4 parts in it. Most books in the 4 parts is that it has a short-term goal, a long-term goal which leads one to enlightenment, and the subject matter. I missed out on one of them, but those requirements, I know the main one about leading to enlightenment is important. Otherwise, they say it's not a book worth reading or studying at the monastery. So Dharmakirti wrote this line, and the next line I think will be discussed next class, which will lead us to the proof of future lives, and also prove that a God could not have created this world. All right. So the last column I'll go over quickly is the 3 types of deductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning, again, is just what we use when it's something we can't see with our 5 senses. So there's 3 types. One is using our logic. Another, though, is belief in an authority. So another way, when the monks are debating something, they can use logic to explain it, or if they've memorized the lines spoken by the Buddha, they can use that as part of their argument, and Buddha, the belief in an authority is considered an authority because supposedly he's told the truth. The example is that he has been the only one to say that life is suffering. Who else has said that? So, things that is a quote that he says can be used as a type of deductive reasoning. And a 3rd type of deductive reasoning is something that by convention we agree to on how to label things. And here it's an example would be, that at one time everyone believed the world to be flat. So it's not important in this conversation, they said, but it is another type of deductive reasoning that we all, example, right now, I guess the convention is we do see things as made up of atoms. In quantum physics, they actually see that things don't exist in one spot, they exist in a cloud, so atoms are made up of even smaller particles named quarks. So that is all the material that was for this class. And so I was going to end class with a little meditation. And this one was from the Asian Classics Institute website. And I've done some of the emptiness meditations with you before, and I was going to repeat one of those, and then when I opened it up, it showed the first one was what they call the rock meditation. So I have to admit, I haven't done this one. Maybe I did it once or twice, but reading it now, it seems quite new to me, but it's the first one. And so I thought, if you want to pause it, and I don't know if you have a rock nearby, a stone, maybe if you don't have that, just something hard nearby that you can grab. So once you do, then why don't you come into your comfortable seated position. Again, with your legs, if you can do the half lotus, 1 foot on your thigh, or the full lotus, do so. But if it hurts the ankles, knees, or hips, you can just cross your leg or extend one out. Gently tilt your pelvis forward and back, and especially if it tilts back, try sitting on a block. I noticed I've kind of been leaning a little to the left when I get a bit tired, so check you're sitting up nice and tall, shoulders relaxed. This one you're going to use your hands, so just rest them by your side and have your hard object beside you. With your chin, you don't want to tuck it in too much, so you look down, or lift it up a bit so you look up. But if you look through the middle of your eyes, you look out towards imaginary horizon. Rest the tip of your tongue where the roof of your mouth meets the top of your teeth. Close your eyes unless you're not too tired. Connect to your breath through your nostrils. Start and enjoy just 10 breaths, just focusing and following the breath through your nostrils. Having the count on your exhalation. Enjoying 3 more breaths. And now continue reading a little of this meditation. And keep your eyes closed. And this meditation focuses on the emptiness of the correlation between what we see with our eyes and and what we touch with our hands. It takes as an example a rock, or this hard object you have, you can hold in your hand and look at. And this exercise, this meditation, is very helpful for establishing how the mind creates all the objects around you, and for realizing that it really is impossible for any object to affect another object at all. The connections we think we see are images of our own mind. So if you don't have that hard object in your hand already, put it in your hand and just feel the hardness. The parts that are hard. And now open your eyes and see the shape of this object and its color. Now think of how default is to observe these features, its shape, its color, and its hardness as within this object itself. It belongs to this object, outside of you. Now see how the mind, imagine how the mind at your heart center is actually creating a connection between what your eyes see and the thing the hand feels. They are two different senses. For them both to be on the same thing, there has to be something that connects your sense of touch and your sense of sight, right? Now imagine if there was no mind to connect what you feel, what you see. You can put down the object, close your eyes again. I'll kind of read you the final part. If you didn't have the seed, the past karma, what they mean by the seed, in your mind to see this object as hard, it wouldn't be hard. And if you didn't have the seed, the past karma in your mind to see it as a shape it is, it wouldn't be that shape. And if you didn't have that seed and the past karma in your mind to see it as that color, it wouldn't be that color. If you couldn't recognize that color, you wouldn't see that color. So these qualities, hardness and the shape, the color, is not coming from the outside of this object, not coming from this object itself, but from your mind projecting onto it. If you had different seeds, different labels in your mind for this, or you could control your seeds, you may possibly feel this object as soft. Possibly see it a different shape. See it a different color. So this is an example of when you hear so-called miracles, like saints walking through a fire without getting burned, because the hotness is not inherently a quality of the fire. Or when you heard of the story of how Jesus could walk on water, that water being something we sink into is not inherently a quality of water. So just end by seeing someone recently who might have upset you, said something you didn't like, argued with you, frustrated you, pissed you off. Probably certainly seems like it came from them. And so your label of them, because of this, might be in younger, be something real that you have felt, seen, or heard. But in the same way, if you can see that this is like the rock, the hard object, it comes from your mind, that this experience, this not so good experience you felt, can you consider that it came from you doing the same to someone else in the past? Maybe you can think of when you last did it. To know, according to the law of karma, what you receive must have come from an action. So if you can't remember, maybe it was something you did in a previous life. So they say to know that you're burning off bad karma, getting rid of that karma, that seed that was planted in the past. And if you do not want to receive this result again, to be really mindful that you don't do the same. To anyone else. And that if you reacted back to them in a way now that you regret, you can do the 4 ways to purify it. Just to recognize that your thoughts, your actions, your words are seeds you plant. That you're going to regret planting that seed. That you're going to make a promise now to yourself of not doing the same the next hour, next few hours, or day, or weeks. And consider this emptiness meditation we just did as kind of a way to help counter that karma you planted so that it won't ripen for you in the future. Then we can just complete this meditation, tuck your chin in, round your back, gently arch forward and back. Back is sore, extend out the legs if you need. Rub your palms together, nice and warm. Cup it over any part, maybe cup it over your eyes. And we'll just end with closing prayers for me to encourage you, if you can, to read the reading from last week. If you didn't, the one for this week is super short, so it won't take you very long at all. And if you can, to even do the homework. Because yeah, the karma from that, the time your mind is immersed in this, will definitely help you. Will make some of these ideas, they say, stay in your mind stream, affect your future decisions on what you want to do with your time, limited time. So we'll do the dedication in Tibetan. Gewa di gewo kun sunam yeshe zoksok sheng sunam yeshe lejong wei dampa kunin topar shok. And then we can do our 3 prostrations. Full one. To thank you if you listen to all this. By the goodness of what you have done, may you reach enlightenment and be able to help all beings. Namaste.